What if I told you that Tesla almost disappeared before it even became a household name in the world? Today, it is a symbol of innovation, technology, and the electrical revolution. But what few people know, and almost no one talks about openly, is that Tesla, in the early 2000s, was just a few days away from total bankruptcy. And the scariest thing? It wasn't just due to poor management, technical failures, or lack of money. Tesla was almost erased from history for much bigger reasons. Reasons that involve billionaire interests, silent sabotage, and a system that didn't want it to work. Yes, behind the success narrative and visionary figure of Elon Musk, there is a little-told story. A story that shows how the invisible gears of the automobile and oil industry have moved to stifle a threat: the electric car. In the early 2000s, while most automakers scoffed at the idea of battery-powered vehicles, a startup called Tesla Motors was beginning to take its first steps. With a bold project, a sporty, fast, beautiful electric car without the smell of gasoline, Tesla was starting to cause problems. And it wasn't much. Centuries-old companies, used to dominating the global market, started to see Tesla a real threat. Oil was still king. The combustion engine was still the soul of the automotive industry. What would happen if a small company with no tradition, no dealership network, no scaled production, proved that it was possible to travel quickly, far, and without polluting? The right questions started to bother the wrong people. Investors began to disappear, contracts evaporated, deadlines were ignored. Everything that could go wrong did. And when it looked like Tesla would finally break the siege, the weight of the sabotage began to show. Not officially, not in headlines, but behind the scenes. Parts that disappeared, suppliers ending last-minute deals, leaked technical reports, disinformation campaigns, everything done in a clean way. Everything made to look natural, but it was orchestrated. And meanwhile, Elon Musk, who at the time was still just an investor and chairman of the board, he found himself faced with a decision: abandon ship or take the helm. He chose the second option, and what came next was one of the most intense corporate battles in modern technology history. But calm down. We're not there yet. The truth is that Tesla almost disappeared without you knowing, and the real reasons for this still remain hidden between the lines of the official story. What you will discover in this video is something that goes far beyond Tesla. It goes far beyond Elon Musk. This story reveals how big interests work behind the scenes to ensure that the future follows a profitable path, even if that path is holding back humanity's progress. So if you think Tesla was just another company that faced difficulties at the beginning, you're about to see a side that few have the courage to show. Because when innovation threatens the trillions of dollars that sustain the world today, she is not met with applause. It is received with silence, with resistance, and often with destruction. And now I ask you, could it be that Tesla almost went bankrupt due to internal failures? Or because they wanted to silence the future? Let's find out together. But prepare yourself. The truth is darker than it seems. You think you've heard this story before. That classic narrative of a bold startup facing financial difficulties coming close to bankruptcy and then being rescued by a visionary genius called Elon Musk. But what almost no one tells you, and what this video will show you, is that the Tesla crisis. It wasn't just a beginner's stumble. It was something much bigger. It was a violent reaction of the system against a threat that could not be allowed. Tesla was born with a simple but powerful idea: to prove that electric cars didn't have to be ugly, slow, or limited. At a time when traditional automakers insisted that battery-powered vehicles were unviable for the general public, Tesla dared. And this did not go unnoticed. The video you're watching right now isn't about an eccentric businessman trying to sell cars. It's about a company that, from the beginning, was hunted. Hunt for challenging a fossil fuel empire, for threatening the automaker's business model, for suggesting that maybe, just maybe, humanity would no longer need to depend on gasoline. If you've ever felt that there's something odd about Sustainable technologies taking so long to become affordable. Or if you've ever wondered why so many electrical innovations of the past have been buried, you are in the right place. In this video, you will understand how Tesla was born with an ambitious plan and was almost destroyed by it, who were the first investors, and why many mysteriously disappeared, the contracts that evaporated without explanation, the forced delays, the parts that didn't arrive, the suppliers that abandoned the project without warning, Elon Musk's silent transition from investor to absolute leader, and the real reason behind it, and mainly, why so many powerful people had an interest in seeing Tesla fail. You may have heard that Tesla almost went bankrupt due to lack of money. That is true, but nobody explained to you why that money never arrived. No one talked about how negotiations were broken down behind the scenes, how banks and investment funds, which had promised support, suddenly froze, payments, how rumors about Tesla's instability were strategically spread in the right circles, undermining the confidence of new investors and poisoning the market against the company. These were not isolated events. These were coordinated, silent, and extremely effective actions. After all, think about it. What does it mean for a company to prove that the electric car is viable, desirable, and more advanced than any combustion engine? It means to put in check billions in oil contracts, billions in automotive parts, billions in mechanical maintenance, workshops, supply networks, and everything that sustains the traditional car ecosystem. Now imagine the impact of this being led by a young, bold startup, without the slightest fear of challenging giants. Tesla, at that time, was not just creating a car. She was threatening to destroy an entire business model. And the consequences were immediate. The crisis that you will see in detail in this video was not just a planning failure, as many like to simplify. It was a siege, an almost invisible operation to suffocate the company before it could prove its effectiveness. But like every good story, there is also a turning point. The moment when Tesla, teetering between collapse and survival, decides to react. The moment when Elon Musk enters definitively, putting what was left of his personal fortune to keep the project alive, even though he knows that there was no guarantee that that money would ever come back. And if you think the drama ends there, you haven't seen anything yet. Because what almost destroyed Tesla, it continues to happen to other companies to this day. Companies trying to break with the old model, startups that dare to challenge the status quo, inventions that could transform the world, but that never reach you. This video is not just about the past. It's about the present. It's about what is still being hidden. It's about what they're trying to bury again. How they buried electric trams, the first cars, powered by clean energy, and so many other technologies that disappeared without explanation. So, watch until the end. You will discover names, numbers, facts, and connections that reveal the real reason why Tesla almost disappeared, and understand how this story continues to repeat itself. Increasingly subtle, increasingly controlled, increasingly profitable for those behind the system. The official story says that Tesla was born in 2003 with a bold idea: to create a high-performance electric sports car that would be capable of competing and surpassing any gasoline car on the market. What a few people know is that this story began amid conflicts, risky bets, and controversial decisions who shaped the company's destiny from day one. Tesla was not founded by Elon Musk, as many people think. The names behind the official creation of Tesla Motors were Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, two engineers passionate about technology who believed that the future of transportation needed to be clean, smart, and electric. They wanted to prove that a battery-powered car could be fast, beautiful, and desirable. Everything that electric models at the time were not. But there was a problem. No one believed that. In a world still dominated by combustion engines, the idea of a high-performance electric car sounded almost like science fiction. The large automakers completely ignored this proposal, and investors were more interested in internet bubbles than in revolutionizing mobility. It was Into this scenario that Elon Musk entered, a name that was already beginning to gain prominence after selling PayPal. In 2004, Musk invested $6.5 million at Tesla and assumed the presidency of the council. From the beginning, he was not just a passive investor. He wanted to get involved. I wanted to give my opinion. And this soon led to friction with the original founders. While Eberhard focused on a car that was realistic, manufacturable, and reliable, Musk insisted on a disruptive, visually stunning vehicle with supercar performance. This internal tension was one of the first signs that even within Tesla, the forces were divided between pragmatism and radical ambition. But this ambition gave rise to a milestone in Tesla's history: the Roadster, the company's first model. Officially launched in 2006, the car was based on the body of the Lotus Elise, but completely converted to run on a lithium-ion battery system, something unheard of at the time. The promise was bold: 0 to 100 km/h in less than 4 seconds, range of 350 km, sporty design, and 0 emissions. But turning that promise into reality was a nightmare. Roadster engineering faced very serious production problems, failures in the electronic system, overheating, brake failures, and consecutive delays. Each week, the delivery date was pushed back. Costs exploded, and the market began to doubt. Furthermore, Tesla began to notice something strange happening behind the scenes. Suppliers who were once excited to participate in the project began to drop out. Partner companies breaking last-minute contracts. Difficulty obtaining essential parts. Small, veiled sabotage, difficult to prove, but impossible to ignore. The project, which should have cost around $25 million, exceeded $100 million. The Roadster was only delivered to its first customers in 2008, with 2 years late and a budget completely out of control. And meanwhile, internal conflicts increased. Elon Musk publicly criticized Eberhard's management. Investors were losing patience. Meetings became battles of egos and pressure for results. Until, at the end of 2007, Martin Eberhard was fired from the very company he helped found. At this point, Tesla was hanging on by a thread. It had a problematic car, sky-high costs, an internal culture that was on the boil, and almost no cash on hand. And as if that weren't enough, the global economy began to collapse with the 2008 crisis. But behind all this, the internal tension, the management errors, and the technical delays, there was a deeper layer. A layer that did not appear in board meetings or in financial press reports. It was the feeling that someone out there didn't want Tesla to survive. Investor refusals, supplier instability, the almost apathetic reaction of the automotive media to such a promising innovation. Everything seemed to indicate that Tesla was being slowly dehydrated. Not with a direct attack, but with a series of coordinated, imperceptible but lethal micro-actions. And then came the tipping point. In the midst of this scenario of near bankruptcy, Elon Musk decides to intervene completely. He fires a part of the team, takes over as full-time CEO, and does something that few would have the courage to do: invests the remainder of his personal fortune in Tesla, even though I knew I could lose everything. But was courage alone enough to save the company? Or was there a moment when the tables turned, not because of internal merit, but because did anyone realize that it was no longer possible to break the Tesla, and then started observing differently? Because what happened soon after was a twist, but not before Tesla became literally 2 days from total bankruptcy. And that is precisely what we are going to reveal below. Who wanted Tesla to go bankrupt? Why? And how did she survive a silent siege designed to crush any possibility of change? What's coming now is no longer about a car. It's about a silent war between the old world and the future that almost didn't happen. The year was 2008. Tesla was in freefall. By this time, the Roadster had already been announced, but scale production was a nightmare. With each new test, new problems emerged. The project turned into a bottomless pit of costs and rework. The batteries failed. The electronic systems had critical errors. The car, which was supposed to revolutionize the industry, became a symbol of unfulfilled promises. Internally, the company was collapsing. Employees left, unmotivated by the uncertainty. The atmosphere was one of constant tension. Emergency meetings were held every day. Plans were torn up and redone. And even more worrying, cash was drying up fast. Tesla was literally days away from breaking. No cash flow, no new contributions, no market confidence. The remaining money was only enough to pay 1 or 2 more payrolls. And after that, the end. But what caused this extreme situation? The easy explanation is to say that Tesla spent more than it could, that the project was too ambitious. What engineering and management errors took the company to the brink of the abyss? But the truth is much more complex. Yes, there were mistakes, but there was also sabotage. Contracts for the supply of essential parts, which should have been signed, began to be broken. Companies that produced components for the Roadster, batteries, converters, embedded software, began to retreat. Some orders were delayed without explanation. Others were canceled. After pressure from bigger clients. Many of these companies depended on contracts with large traditional automakers, and that was precisely the point. The same automakers that would see their structure threatened by the success of Tesla's electric car. At the same time, banks that had promised investment rounds began to waver. And it wasn't just because of the 2008 economic crisis. Many of these funds were directly linked to groups that invested in oil, fossil fuels, or in companies with an interest in maintaining the combustion engine. Tesla was seen as a systemic risk. If it worked, it would show the world that it was possible to live without gasoline. If the Roadster worked, it would prove that the electric car could be sexy, fast, desirable. And if that happened, what would come next? A collapse in the oil chain, the drop in sales of traditional models, the forced reinvention of the entire industry. The game was much bigger than a car, and while all this was happening, the Automotive press made a point of downplaying the project. Reports mocked the delays. They pointed to the high cost of the car as proof of its unfeasibility. Technology websites called Tesla a doomed California dream. The campaign of distrust was constant, and as we know in the business world, trust is everything. Without it, there are no investors. Without it, there are no partners. Without it, a company burns down, even without being wrong. At this critical point, Elon Musk made the riskiest decision of his life. He had already invested millions, but now he decided to put all that was left of his personal fortune, around $40 million, into Tesla. It was all in. A last attempt to keep the project breathing while looking for solutions. This attitude is constantly romanticized, as if it were the heroic gesture of a visionary billionaire. But what many forget is that, even with this contribution, Tesla remained surrounded. In parallel, Musk began an intense campaign to find allies who would not only invest money, but also helped to legitimize Tesla in the market. It was at that moment that Daimler, the German giant that owns Mercedes-Benz, made a strategic investment. And, most importantly, an actual contract to supply batteries to the smart EV range. This movement was the oxygen that Tesla needed. The company was able to breathe once again. But she wasn't saved yet. Even with Daimler's support, the market's distrust was brutal. Tesla needed more money. You needed to scale your operation. I needed to prove that the Roadster was not an isolated case, but the first step in a revolution. It is at this moment that the United States government enters the scene. But contrary to what many think, it wasn't easy. The Department of Energy's famous loan only came after much resistance, harsh audits, and public pressure that involved congressmen, opposing lobbies, and internal debates. Tesla almost didn't make it. And many said, behind the scenes, that the objective was precisely this: to suffocate before authorizing. But why so afraid of a startup? Because Tesla wasn't just a company. She represented a disruption in the fuel consumption model, in the automotive maintenance model, in the manufacturing model, in the profit model, and more. It threatened billion-dollar sectors that never accepted the word disruption well. The 2008 crisis was almost Tesla's tombstone, but she survived. And that, for many, was a problem. Because now the world would see that, yes, the electric car was possible, and worse, the public would begin to demand it. But who exactly tried to stop this advance? Which companies, groups, or sectors would profit from Tesla's downfall? And why, to this day, are there those who hope and act for it to fail? Answers begin to reveal themselves from now on, because what seemed like just imminent bankruptcy was, in fact, a silent attack on the future of mobility. Tesla almost went bankrupt. That's a fact. But the question that almost no one asks is, who would really benefit from this? Because in a billion-dollar market, where every change represents a threat to entire empires, the bankruptcy of a company like Tesla wouldn't just be a statistic, it would be a strategic victory. Tesla was born with a dangerous idea. Dangerous for those who profit from the traditional model. An electric car without a combustion engine, without the need for gasoline, with minimal maintenance which could be updated by software, directly from the cloud. This put not only the automakers at risk, but the entire power chain of the automobile industry. Think of the thousands of dealers, authorized workshops, parts manufacturers that make a living from mechanical failure, gas stations, oil companies, oil mining companies, car financing and leasing systems that value the traditional model. All these sectors, which move trillions of dollars, found themselves threatened by a company that said, the car can be electric, and better. The first to react was traditional automotive industry. Giants like Ford, GM, Chrysler, and others have spent decades denying the viability of the electric car. Not out of ignorance, but out of convenience. The combustion engine is an expensive technology to maintain, full of moving parts with a chain of services and products that guarantees profits throughout the vehicle's useful life. Tesla's electric car was the opposite. Simple, clean, modular, with less maintenance, and most dangerous of all, better for the consumer. And when something is better for the consumer and bad for large corporations, the reaction is immediate. Behind the scenes, lobbies began to move. The automotive press, which survives on advertising from these same automakers, began to portray Tesla as an eccentric, utopian, unviable company. Malicious articles were planted. The Roadster's delays were exaggerated. Elon Musk's personality was attacked. United States dealer associations began to exert political pressure against Tesla, making direct sales to consumers difficult. They knew that if Tesla managed to break this model, the entire distribution network of large automakers would be threatened. But the darkest attack came from another sector, the energy sector. The oil industry saw Tesla as an existential threat. For every electric car that runs, there is one less car filling up with gasoline. It is a direct reduction in the demand for fossil fuels. And worse, Tesla wasn't just selling cars. She was developing charging infrastructure, high-capacity batteries, solar panels, home energy solutions. In other words, a complete ecosystem that could allow energy independence for millions of people. Can you imagine the panic in the boardrooms of ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell? Tesla wasn't just an automotive startup. It was the harbinger of the end of an era. And when such a threat arises, the wheels of sabotage begin to turn. Financing that evaporates. Suppliers who break. Contracts. Investment funds that withdraw at the last minute. The excuse? Risk. Uncertainty. But behind the scenes, pressure was on. Phone calls exchanged, alliances activated. Tesla was being cornered not only by the 2008 crisis, but for a silent war. And at the center of this war was Elon Musk, trying to keep an idea alive that many wanted to see buried. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened. In the 1990s, GM released the EV1, an electric car that worked perfectly. Do you know what happened? It was removed from the market, the units were confiscated and destroyed. Documentaries like Who Killed the Electric Car? They have already shown the firepower of oil companies and car manufacturers when they feel threatened. With Tesla, the script seemed to repeat itself. Only this time, there was something different. The internet, independent media, increasing environmental pressure, and a figure willing to risk everything, Musk. Still, the attacks continued. As Tesla began to recover, new strategies emerged. Lawsuits, regulatory barriers, coordinated reviews in specialized media. To this day, in several American states, Tesla is prohibited from selling directly to consumers. This is no coincidence. It's resistance. It's protection for the old model. And this resistance has a name: lobbying. According to data from regulatory bodies, the largest U.S. automakers and oil companies invest hundreds of millions of dollars a year in political lobbying. And much of this effort is aimed at stopping the expansion of solutions like Tesla. Because Tesla's success is not just a business victory, it's an affront. It is living proof that what we were told for decades, that the electric car was not viable, was a lie. And now that Tesla has survived the initial siege, the war has changed shape. Today, it is fought in the courts, in trade laws, in media campaigns, in financial markets. But the truth remains. If Tesla had gone bankrupt in 2008, millions would have breathed a sigh of relief. And the future, the one you're living in now, would have been very, very different. The question is the conspiracy over, or did she just change her strategy? Tesla was literally one step away from the abyss. Employees were fired, meetings were held with the lights off to save energy, late bills, investors disappearing. Elon Musk, until then seen as an eccentric visionary, was now called crazy for betting everything on an idea that seemed bankrupt. The press predicted the end. Suppliers refused new orders. And even within the company, many did not believe that Tesla would survive until the following month. It was 2008. The global market was collapsing. And Tesla, it was broken. But it was precisely at that point, when everything seemed lost, that the unexpected happened. Or better, the unlikely. Elon Musk decided to risk everything. In truth, he had already put millions into the project, but now he would go further. At that moment, Musk invested almost all of the rest of his personal fortune, about $40 million, to keep Tesla alive. It was a desperate move. No guarantees, no promises, no return contracts. It was the last card. But why did he do this? Some would say it was ego, others stubbornness. But the truth is that Elon knew something that others hadn't yet realized. Tesla wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. If she died there, the idea that the electric car could be anything more than an experimental concept would die with her. And Musk, obsessed with the idea of accelerating the future, was willing to pay the price. With this personal investment, he was able to hold the company for a few more weeks. But that alone wouldn't be enough. Tesla needed something bigger, a strategic ally, a giant that gave legitimacy to its technology. That's when the Daimler, given to Mercedes-Benz. In a deal that changed Tesla's destiny, Daimler announced that it would invest $50 million in the startup. But more than the financial value, the agreement provided that Tesla would supply batteries for Smart's electric cars, a real, scalable, and marketable product. This contract, it was the breather that Tesla needed. The market started to pay attention. The name Tesla left the failed experiment category and began to circulate in board meetings as a possible player of the future. Shortly afterwards, with renewed prestige, Tesla managed to a $465 million loan from the United States Department of Energy, a fundamental value, to start the development of Model S, the car that would truly put Tesla on the world map. But it is important to understand that this loan, it wasn't easy. The process was bureaucratic, slow, and full of obstacles. Many people within the government were pushing against it. Lobby groups tried to sabotage approval. And once again, hidden interests acted behind the scenes. But this time, Tesla survived, and that changed everything. The Model S, released years later, was not just a car, it was a manifesto for what Tesla had become. An elegant, powerful vehicle with long-distance autonomy, automatic update system, and zero pollutant emissions. The market looked, and for the first time, saw the future. Tesla began to attract not only consumers, but followers. People willing to buy the idea even before the product. Visionary investors, elite engineers, and of course, more sophisticated enemies. Because by surviving, Tesla had proven something uncomfortable, that the impossible was possible, that it didn't need to be a century-old automaker, nor have billions in advertising. All it took was courage, technology, and surviving the first attack. But this victory did not mean peace. Quite the opposite. Now the game would become even more subtle. With political disputes, legal blocks, disinformation campaigns, and new competitors emerging. Some legitimate, others not so much. Tesla escaped certain death. But the conspiracy did not end there. She just changed of form. And now, it's up to us to look at what happened next with a new eye. Because what almost erased Tesla from the map still exists. And maybe he's ready to act again. Tesla survived. But the system that almost killed her is still standing. What we have seen so far is not just the story of one company. It is the portrait of a pattern. A silent cycle where innovations are stifled before they even become real. Where revolutionary ideas are discredited, ridiculed, or bought and buried. Tesla escaped. Barely. But will they all escape? How many clean, sustainable, and accessible technologies were erased before they reached us? How many startups with real solutions for transport, energy, health, and food have been sabotaged, silenced, discredited? How many ideas were destroyed simply because they threatened the profit-making of gigantic industries? Tesla wasn't the first, and it may not be the last. Today, the company is seen as synonymous with innovation. But if it had gone bankrupt in 2008, what would we have in its place? Nothing. No major automaker really believed in the electric car at that time. What if Tesla had disappeared? The transition to a cleaner model could have been delayed for decades. And now that Tesla has paved the way, are they ready to accept other changes? Or will the next company that threatens a profitable industry be stifled before you even hear about it? These questions are more important now than ever. We are at a time where technology evolves faster than politics, faster than laws, faster than the ethics of large conglomerates. And meanwhile, the same lobbies remain active. The same forces that tried to stop Tesla are more sophisticated, quieter, but no less dangerous. Because for those who profit from the status quo, progress is a threat, and the future, an enemy. What you saw in this video was just an example. But he raises a warning. How many other possible futures are being sabotaged right now? Maybe the right question is no longer, why did Tesla almost go bankrupt? But yes, how many Teslas are being prevented from being born right now? And then I ask you, can you believe this game is already over? Or do you think this conspiracy is just beginning? Disguised as regulations, economic interests, justified political decisions? Leave your opinion in the comments. Do you think Tesla won, or just survived for now? Share this video and subscribe to the channel, because in the coming episodes we will continue to unearth stories like this, where the future was silently sabotaged and the public never found out. Until next time. And don't forget, not all technology fails because it is bad. Some fail because they work too well.